I started lino printing in early 2023. I was actually introduced to it by taking one of the classes in university. It honestly wasn't what I was expecting at all. I thought like we were talking about literal like printing presses back in the day when they would like, you know, hand make all the newspapers and that kind of stuff. That was the type, well, I guess it's kind of related, but I was not expecting this type of class, and safe to say that I have been pleasantly surprised, because here I am 2 years later, almost 3 years later, still enjoying this new hobby of mine. So I thought I would sit down and make a video and kind of share my journey with lino printing and show you guys what I made during my time at university and now the different stuff that I have made outside of university. And yeah, let's get started. So, as I said, I was introduced to linoleum carving printing when I took a class while I was in university. So I actually did all of this from my own home because I was doing a university online at the time because of COVID and that kind of stuff. And I just like continued online schooling because that's just personally what works best for me. And it was great that this type of class was actually available through online means, and we just had to order all of the stuff like a care package from one of the local art stores, and we just had to get started. So let me show you guys my very first project. So basically how it works, if you don't know what linoleum is, it's basically like rubber, I think. I don't know, it's like a rubber thing. You basically get this type of block that then has a linoleum layer on top, and then with one of these handy dandy little tools, I use one of the speedball ones, which is really practical. You just open it up and then you get a bunch of different little carving bits, which is really fun. And then you just have to like twist the top, kind of looks like this. And then you simply just insert it in there and you tighten it, and voila, you have a carving tool. So basically you use this carving tool on the linoleum and you carve out what you don't want to be printing basically, and you print out your thing and you have a carving that basically is just a giant stamp. That's basically what linoleum printing is. So that's really fun. So this was my very ever first project. I have always been someone who has really liked the concept of like memento mori and that kind of stuff, and just like, you know, that type of art that makes some people uncomfortable. So this was my very first one. I wanted to kind of do like a series of like memento mori pieces throughout my entire class, because overall there were 3 big projects, and this being the first one where we just had to do a simple carving and just stamp it in black. I also found the old pictures that I had to take in order to like submit my assignments and stuff, so I'll put more pictures on screen like right here of what the final projects look like. On top of this project of like the regular black printing, we also had to experiment doing like a gradient background with 2 different colors. And yeah, that was like a really cool concept to kind of learn how to do as well. And yeah, so this was my very first one. It is basically the depiction of death holding a baby, and basically just symbolizing that like it comes for everybody at some point, and it is like both the cycle of life and death. While death can deliver life, and life can also deliver death, and anyways, that kind of stuff. I wrote a whole essay on it. I'm not gonna bore you guys with the details. So yeah, this was my very first one, which is very exciting, and now we have 2 more to go through. Now for the other 2 projects, I did not keep the blocks because of the nature of just how the project was and the type of carving that we had to do. The blocks were no longer reusable. What's great about the first project is that we didn't have to carve a second time in order to do a second print. So this is just 1 carving and 1 print, and that's it. So this can always be reused, which is why I kept it, because I do like it. But then the other ones, the second project, we had to do 3 printing layers basically. And basically what that entails is that you have your block, and then you carve out the first portion, you stamp that, you take your block again, you carve it a second time, you then put paint on it again and then stamp it again. basically to do a layer of painting, and like what you take away will like reveal the first print. I don't know if I'm explaining that right, but basically here's my second project here. We can see a depiction of a skull with the spinal cord, and then we also have like some dead hanging flowers around it as well, as long with a border as well. And so basically what I had to do for this one is that we can see that there are some white portions, so that I carved immediately, and that was my very first print. So basically on the entire gray linoleum block, all I had carved out were the teeth and whatever white parts, and that's it. The rest of it was stamped on and printed. So that light pink color, that is the background. The second print was then the like more defining details, and then the third print and whatever. So you guys can like kind of like understand like the layers that goes into that. So the more you carve out, obviously the less there is on the linoleum block, and therefore you cannot reuse it because of the nature of the type of carving. But it makes for these really cool layered pieces, and it was really fun to do, and I would love to redo one of these. It just definitely takes a lot of like pre-planning, at least for me. Some people just like go with it and whatever. I had to like take my sketchbook and really plan out every single layer to make sure that I didn't miss anything while I was carving, so that I wouldn't have like any mishaps or mistakes or whatever. This type of project is really fun, but it is very tricky because once you stamp it, you have to make sure when you go to stamp a second time that everything is perfectly aligned, which can be really challenging to do. We learned like a couple different ways in class, but then I figured out my own way that worked a little bit better, which was just on like hopes and prayers and just really holding it at the corner and hoping for the best. So it's not the easiest, but it makes for really cool pieces if you take your time and do it properly. And yeah, so that was my second project. It was just, again, a depiction of death and like these rotting flowers or whatever that, you know, obviously show like life, like full of flowers or whatever, and then the flower dies because, you know, the cycle of life. So that was my second piece for the class that I did. And then finally, the third project, we basically had to combine our knowledge of the first project and the second project and make one big piece of two different prints. So basically taking the knowledge of the first project, we just had to do like a simple like black and white stamp. And this is where I strayed from my theme of Memento Mori. I instead went with some how do I explain this? I guess some symbolism that has like some personal history with like family and loved ones and things like that. So the very first one was a cheese grater print that I think actually turned out really cute. So it's basically this cheese grater with like some vines and some flowers coming out of it. It's an inside joke with my girlfriend and I just really like how it turned out. I thought it turned out really cute. And then the second piece, which is taking the stuff that we have learned from the second project, was to do a layered print. This one I think I did like 5 or 6 different prints, so that took a lot of planning. It didn't turn out too great, unfortunately, because of some mistakes I made. But this one kind of still follows the theme of the cheese grater by showing like a cheese board with some wine glasses, and some paintings, just to kind of like hint at my childhood a little bit with my dad and our French heritage, and just enjoying like a glass of wine and cheese and stuff after a meal. So that was the second project, and here's what it ended up looking like, and I actually have the prints right here. Okay, here we go. I kept them. How exciting. So here on the left, we have, or is it your left or my left? It's on my left. My brain. So here is the very first project I did. So this is what it looks like when it's actually printed. You can see that I hadn't fully like carved out the sides a little bit, so it printed a little bit of like the excess linoleum that stayed on there, which I personally think that it does like a really cool like sketch effect, but not everybody likes that, and some people like really like it nice and clean, and that's totally okay. But I thought that it fit my theme a little bit well in terms of like the messiness, so that's what the first one looks like. Here is the second project. Sorry for the glare, I don't want to take it out of the plastic because I'm lazy. But yeah, so here is the second project. We can see the white where I had carved out initially, and then the light pink, which was the second print, the middle pink or whatever for the third print, and then the fourth print was the final dark parts of like all the dead roses and the darker parts of the skull and the spine. So yeah, I had to take both of my knowledges for this in order to make the final project. Very exciting that I was able to find them. Very fun. And then for the final project, we had to make them on the big pieces of paper because we had to put both of them on one piece. The thing is with printing is that every piece is going to look a little bit different because, especially when you're first starting out, obviously, because as you print, it's difficult to like kind of know like how much paint you're putting on, and if you put too much paint, then it'll go in the cracks of your printing block and thus kind of like omit where you want it to print properly and that kind of stuff. So I'll show you guys an example in a second. But this is what my final project looked like. So here we can see the cheese grater that I was talking about with some grapes and some music and that kind of stuff. And then here was the more complicated one where we had to do like, I think it was again 5 or 6 different printings. And yeah, it didn't turn out that great. I was a little bit limited in my color palette, which was a little bit difficult for me. Because we had like 3 different colors and I just had to mix and hope for the best. So also when printing, I had to make sure to mix a proper amount of paint to do the 4 to 5 different copies. I don't love this piece, but I learned a lot from it and I'm hoping to redeem myself at some point by doing another one. So we'll see, maybe a limited edition print or something. But yes, so that's what it looked like. And what I mean about the amount of paint that you put on and how it can affect how it prints. Let me show you. So on this one, you can see the grapes have very defined lines to kind of like indicate like where the grapes are. But unfortunately in this one, I had put too much paint and thus you can kind of see like the ridges a bit. There we go. Of where the paint is, and it just like hid where I wanted the white to be. So when you put it on a little bit too thick on the printing block, it does affect the quality of your print. And yeah, so that concludes my little background check of my beginnings of Lino printing in university. And now I've only done one other project outside of university, which is the one I'm going to show you now. I do have a couple other ones lined up that I haven't started yet, but I'm very excited. And this next project I'm very excited about, and I hope you like it. So let's get into it. So for this one, I again wanted to continue kind of with the Memento Mori type of theme, just because that's for some reason the one theme that really inspires me a lot whenever I make art and that I find really fun. And so I had done like a couple sketches in my sketchbook to kind of figure out like what I wanted some things to look like. And so this is what I ended up with. This is actually what it looks like. I have to write backwards in order for it to print properly, right? So that's kind of crazy. Following kind of like that Memento Mori style, except for the goldfish. He's just there and he's cute and we love him. It's great. But yeah, and I had a specific idea for this project, which I did already round 1 of, and we're gonna do round 2 today together. Let me show you. So a while ago, I actually got some sticker paper and I was like, oh my gosh, what if I just take my Lino project, stamp it on some sticker paper, cut it out, and then I have stickers. Smart, right? So that's what I did, and look at this. It's so cool to like see them and hold them. Like, I made this sticker. Like, that is so cool. So I made stickers, which is super cool, and it's basically this vinyl sticker paper that I found on Amazon. So it's just like a simple white background sticker, and then on top of that I put a layer of sticky plastic. I don't know my terminology. But basically I had like this giant roll of like this clear plastic vinyl thing, and then I just like put it on top of my printed sticker sheet, and then I just cut it out so that it has like some like a protection on top of the ink, so that if ever there's like a drop of water or something on it, like it doesn't ruin the piece immediately. I wouldn't say that these are fully waterproof in any way. I wouldn't say that they are dishwasher safe whatsoever for like water bottles or anything like that, but it'll survive wear and tear a lot better if you just like put it on your notebook or whatever. So instead of just having like straight up paper. So yeah, these are the stickers that I made, which is very, very exciting. And I'm gonna give myself a goal that by the time this video comes out, some of these sets will be available in my Etsy shop if you guys are interested in purchasing one for yourselves. I don't know about where I will be able to ship. I still have to do research on that, but you can always go and check it out. The link will be in the description down below if you were maybe interested in picking up a set for yourself. I'll have them relatively cheap because this is just like a fun little thing that I thought I would try out, especially with Halloween coming up. I thought it was fitting to do a release of these sticker sets. But yeah, let's make one together right now. Let's do it. Let's go. Hi, hello, welcome to my very professional setup on my floor beside my window, right beside a white carpet. I wouldn't recommend that you do this beside a carpet, but listen, small apartment, gotta do what you gotta do. So basically the tools that we are using today, we have this rubber roller. This is used to roll the paint onto the block, very simple. We'll be doing that. And then with that, we have this thing that I call a presser. I don't actually know what it is, but you use it to like press down to make sure that the print is nice and even. And then I just have like this random plastic thing, but this is where I usually put my paint, and then I just like use it as a palette basically, and from there we survive. Then I always have like some paper towel on hand just because, you know, things can get messy. And then we have these various colors of paint and stuff. I, again, usually go with black, but I was given a blue, a white, a yellow, and a pink. Honestly, the setup process is pretty simple. First things first is that you just want to grab like a regular piece of paper. This is literally just printer paper. This is from my other time. But basically you want to start off your printing with just like a regular piece of paper so that you can just like get the first bad print out, because while I loaded the linoleum block last time, we can see that it didn't print very well, just because it's basically a chance for the linoleum to hydrate itself to do a proper printing for when you do your actual prints. So I just grabbed my palette. I literally just put paint on it, just like that. You really don't need that much. You can always add more a little bit later. Well, I know I'm gonna be doing quite a couple of prints today, so I'll just put a little bit more. And then you just wanna like gently wipe off any possible crumbs on your roller just to make sure that that doesn't end up like in your paint. And then really simple, you're just gonna literally just roll in it. That's it. Just like that. And then you see it's not fully even out, so basically what you want to be doing for the first like minute or so is to just keep rolling it to make sure you have a nice even coat everywhere on the roller. So this layer is pretty thick. You can see like it's really like bubbling up. So again, that's why that first print is really important to do on just a spare piece of paper, because it will definitely not be perfect. So I already know I have too much paint, but that is a-okay. So I'm just going to grab my block, gonna make sure my paper is nearby. You also want to make sure that you have like a nice even flooring for this. I have some cracks in my wooden floor, so that's why I just lay out, well, on top of like trying to protect my floor from the paint, I have this brown paper in order to just like protect my floor and also to like even out a little bit the bumps and nooks and crannies. So I'm gonna have my block just like that. And I'm simply gently just going to let the roller roll on top. I'm not pressing hard at all. I'm just letting the paint go on it naturally. And for this, I was taught that it's very important to do just like all directions, just to make sure that every single, you know, area is covered. But that is okay. That is why we're doing our first test print. And so with this, because we don't really care about this paper very much, I'm not going to really care about how I'm lining it up, but I simply just flip it over like that. And then honestly, I just use my body weight. And I'm just pressing on it, just letting the paper soak up the ink. And then honestly, sometimes if, you know, after 2 or 3 prints, like my knuckles are hurting or whatever, I literally just stand on it. This may be absolutely crazy, and maybe some art professionals and teachers are absolutely screaming right now, but hey, it works, right? And then usually to then use the presser, I just like gently pick up the block with the paper, and then I gently flip it over. The paint like really acts as a glue in that moment in order to like not let like the paper like fall off. So we already can kind of see the print and what it'll look like. But then you're just gonna want to wipe your presser a little bit, making sure that there's no crumbs so it's nice and even, and then you're literally just going to press down. And then sometimes I do like some twisting motions as I move it around just a little bit. This basically just, again, make sure that you have like a nice even print. But again, this is the first tester print, so we don't really entirely care how this one turns out. It's really just to hydrate the block a little bit with the paint so that we get some nice prints later on. So normally I would press for a lot longer to make sure I have a good print, but once again, we don't care about this one. And then usually if I'm doing like an actual print, I'm just going to take off half of it, see how it prints, put it back, check the other side and whatnot. But this is just cheap paper, so we don't really care. And yeah, so this is the first print. As I said, there was way too much paint, so it's a little bit fuzzy in certain areas, and that is a-okay. And there we go. So now our block is ready. Some of the cheap paper actually kind of came off on the block, which don't love that. So I'm just gonna take my paper towel and try to wipe it off. So before I start putting more paint, I'm just going to grab my sticker sheet. And once again, just repeat the process. Loading up my roller with just a little bit of paint, seeing that it's nice and even, and just rolling it on top. Now I can already see that we lost the bird's eye because that first print just had a little bit too much. So I'm just gonna take a very professional carving tool, kind of like take out some of that ink. Alright, I don't think this one's gonna turn out very good, but that is a-okay. And then I simply just stamp it. So as I said, first I just check how it prints. We can already see that I didn't fully press properly. This was intentional just to kind of like show you guys kind of like what it looks like, so we can see that the D did not print properly and all that kind of stuff. So we're just going to lay it back down, and I kept my hand on this side the entire time to make sure that we did not lose the alignment. So now I'm just going to make sure that I press nicely and firmly so that we don't lose our spot, and then I'm just going to keep pressing. Other side seems good. Let's check this side again. Seems okay, and voila. Now once again, a little bit too much paint. We lost a lot of detail in the bird here, unfortunately, and some details in the skull. So I will try and rectify the next print in order to avoid that. So let's do that. So what I'm gonna do, instead of re-rolling my roller in the paint, I'm just going to like roll it a bit on the bottom side here where there is no paint, just to thin out what paint I already have on the roller. So already there we can see that that is a nicer, thinner layer. So hopefully that will help. What can also help in this situation is to just take like a paper towel, and I'm just going to gently wipe and dab my block just to see whatever excess ink that needs to come off. So already we can see that, again, I'm not a professional. This is, you know, a very common reoccurring issue when I do printing. I'm still learning what amount of paint I need to be putting on. I don't see any crumbs. Let's try this again. we go. We can see that we have a better print already. We can see a lot more details in the bird. We can also see that there is a little crumb that I missed that actually gave quite an interesting effect to death over here. Okay, I took it off, and let's keep printing to make sure it's nice and even. A little bit more, I think we're missing just a little bit of paint actually, so I'm just gonna quickly go in, do another thin layer, making sure that I'm not touching my paper just in case. Again, it's not entirely perfect. There seems to be some crumbs here that I missed. Probably when I was just wiping off the excess, there's a little bit of tissue paper on it. That is okay. So this is our second print. It's already better than the first, so that's good. Personally, I do kind of like the distressed look of like it not printing perfectly. I think it just adds to like the vibe of the theme. But yeah, so this is what we're working with. Ta-da! So now I'm just gonna pause. I'm gonna go and do just a bunch of prints, and I'll come back to you once that's done, and I'll show you guys my progress. Okay, BRB. All right, so I ended up just making 2 more prints, like 2 more sheets, just because my hands are really hurting today, unfortunately. So I was gonna do more, but I don't think it's gonna work out today, but that is okay. I at least have 6 different sticker sets done. One of them maybe not entirely usable. It'll be part of like maybe like an oops package. But for the other ones, it was a weird printing day. Some days are just weird like that. But even though I would re-go and add a little bit of paint, it seems like the stuff just wouldn't fully print properly. But these are still, I would rather this than have too much paint, because too much paint you can't really go and edit. But with this, I can just like take my time, go in with a paintbrush and like fix it up a little bit. So I'm not too mad about it, because I still can use these, no problem. So on my own time, I'm just gonna go and like repaint the interior of a couple of them just to make them a little bit more filled in, especially like that soon for that skull right there. Just like clean it up a little bit. So these take a little while to dry. I always want to make sure that they are as dry as possible to make sure that there is like no smudging or any issues that arise when we cover it up with the plastic vinyl. I don't think I'm gonna end up showing how I do that, because I mean it's pretty basic. Basically you have your sheet of paper, right, and then you have your giant roll. I basically just cut it to size, so I usually just take this bottom piece and I roll it out to the size that I want to cover, which is usually like about this big or so ish, to do like 1 block size. So then I cut that. I basically just align the corners just at the top first. So basically imagine this, but like with the bigger sheet. I take off the backing of just the very top, just like this. So imagine this, but like with the whole thing, and I just make sure that I align it throughout the entire top here, nice and straight. And then I go in with a ruler, or like, you know, people use like credit cards, or, you know, like a small, straight, sturdy something. And then just gently push down until it covers the entire thing to make sure I avoid any air bubbles, air pockets, things like that. This is why it's also good to have less paint than more paint when you want to cover it up like this, because the extra paint will create like obviously like a bigger edge, and therefore keep more of like air inside on, even like if you cover it up with plastic, and thus making like a little bit of a bubble, and you can kind of like see that in the final product. So it's better to have less paint so that it's a little bit more flat, so that when you do cover it, it's less evident. But yeah, so then I just like push it down, make sure like I push all the air bubbles out nice and straight. This one doesn't peel off very easy once it's on, especially once it's on top of ink. Okay, that wasn't too bad. So I try to, you know, have it perfect from the beginning. Obviously not all of them are perfect. I do have an example. This is my bullet journal, where I put like all the mishaps basically that happened when I was doing my first cover up. And we can see that there were like some, how do I show this? There we go. There were like some air pockets that turned into these harsh veins that like stick out a little bit, and it's not like the prettiest. So I'm trying to avoid that. So these are like the oops stickers basically, but this is what they could look like if you get a set. Obviously they'll be more perfect than this, but fun, cute. So yeah, I just cover them with the vinyl to just make them a little bit more durable, but they look really great on sketchbooks, bullet journals, whatever. If you want to get a set, it'll be in my Etsy, link down below. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed watching my entire process. It was very fun to share. I haven't done this in a really long time. I hope you guys enjoyed watching the process. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you learned something. Again, go check out my Etsy if you want this pack of stickers. It has all 6 stickers in the set. If you get them, I hope you like them. Please leave me a review and let me know if you want to see anything specific in sticker sets that I could carve. Why not? It could be fun. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys all very soon. Bye guys!